Whilst many of us picture Egypt to be filled with dusty, sandy roads offset with the odd pyramid, the modern Egyptian lifestyle is far from this. Despite our primary school history lessons being filled with the process of mummification and the role of pharaohs, which are important aspects of Egyptian history, there is so much more than that hidden in the past of Egypt. Between school, the media, and Hollywood movies, there is no wonder these misconceptions are around. So today, we will be looking at 3 interesting and mysterious Egyptian discoveries that you probably missed from your time in school. Oxyrhynchus papyri. The Oxyrhynchus papyri are a series of manuscripts giving insights into some ancient civilizations. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, 2 papyrologists, Bernard Pine Grenfell and Arthur Sorage Hunt, uncovered this collection of manuscripts in Egypt. As professors of papyrology, the pair research, analyze, and study ancient literature, presented and preserved as a manuscript that has been recorded papyrus. Papyrus was the sole most common writing material used within ancient civilizations, including ancient Egypt, so those who study it are aware of the society, culture, and languages of these ancient societies. Grenfell and Hunt found this extraordinary group of manuscripts nearby to Oxyrhynchus, an Egyptian city and well-established archaeological site. In fact, many suggest that Oxyrhynchus is the single most important archaeological site to have been discovered to date. More specifically, however, the pair discovered these texts in an ancient rubbish dump. Researchers have successfully dated the Oxyrhynchus papyri to the Ptolemaic and Roman Egyptian eras, ranging roughly between 32 BC until approximately 640 AD, marking the Muslim conquest of Egypt. Despite the common connotations with the word manuscript, only an estimated 10% of the Oxyrhynchus papyri are literary, with the majority being comprised of documents such as codes, registers, census returns, petitions, court records, accounts, and even private letters, as opposed to being extended pieces of written work. This is not uncommon in papyrology, with correspondence and legal archives being as significant an element as the literary work. Most of the Oxyrhynchus papyri were written in Greek, with a great deal also being produced in Egyptian using hieroglyphics, both hieratic and demotic. Some other languages seen include Latin, Arabic, Hebrew, Aramaic, Syriac, and Pahlavi, though in decreasing percentages. This presents a grand opportunity for etymological research as well as archaeological, delving into the history and development of each of these individual languages. Since their initial discovery in 1898, over 5,000 of these documents have been transcribed, a momentous achievement considering this information stemmed from boxes filled with tiny fragments and pieces, mere centimeters large. Despite so much having been achieved, this is considered to have only 1 to 2% of the papyri accounted for, leaving a minimum of 500,000 manuscripts left to be prepared, transcribed, and deciphered before the final step, cataloging. Today, the Oxyrhynchus papyri are stored worldwide in respected institutions, including Oxford University's Ashmolean Museum. These documents have given us a whole host of information, from the written words on topics from maths to drama to religion to the practices and processes of ancient societies. Ancient Egyptians used meteorites as jewelry. A more cultural piece of research shows that from 3300 BC onwards, Egyptian jewelry-making practices have used meteorite iron. In 1911, a series of iron beads on strings were found when the Gezer Cemetery underwent excavation. Named the Gezer bead, this is believed to be the earliest use of iron from ancient Egyptian society that we are yet to discover, with these beaded necklaces being dated between 3500 and 3600 BC, despite this being centuries prior to the Egyptian Iron Age. Initial assumptions were quick to label the necklace beads to be formed from meteorite iron, a claim supported by the nickel-rich iron composition, though this notion was not long established before it underwent criticism. In the 1980s, researchers expanded the possibilities that they may have accounted for this, considering that these iron creations were early efforts to smelt iron, not iron derived from a meteorite. A broad regional range of research has collaborated throughout Britain, from the Natural History Museum located in London, to the Open University based in Milton Keynes, to the University of Manchester. The research undertaken by the British team included the use of both an electron microscope and a CT scanner to if the composition aligned with expectations. Then this procedure can be seen as having confirmed the iron is indeed that of a meteorite. Professor Philip Withers from the University of Manchester described meteorites as having a unique microstructural and chemical fingerprint, meaning that identifying said fingerprint in Egyptian artifacts is strong evidence for meteorites having been used. This study concluded just that. This fingerprint within the 5,300-year-old Gezer beads is a result of the meteorite having been used, distinctive due to a meteorite's slow travel through space impacting its composition. Not only does this research provide important information into the makeup and tracing of meteorites, but it also allows us to see how modern equipment and technology can accelerate and improve the accuracy of these identification processes. Perhaps most importantly, we can understand the role of these materials in different societies. Dr. Diane Johnson, affiliated with the Open University Center for Earth, Planetary, Space, and Astronomical Research, states, meteorite iron had profound implications for the ancient Egyptians, both in their perception of the iron in the context of its celestial origin and in early metallurgy attempts. This idea was supported by statements made by Dr. Joyce Tilsley from the University of Manchester, who suggested that whilst our modern society views iron as practical but dull, it was a rare and beautiful material to ancient Egyptians. Apparently, due to meteorites having fallen from the sky, iron was believed to have been magical or religious in its nature. There is lots to learn surrounding the practices of ancient societies, and the use of iron in ancient Egypt suggests skills and understanding centuries ahead of its time. Egypt is full of cultural and historical discoveries and mysteries, making it the beautiful country it is today. What more can we learn about its intriguing past? The plague of Cyprian having impacted not just Egypt but a large portion of the Roman Empire, the plague of Cyprian has gripped the attention of many history enthusiasts over the years. This plague was deadly and devastating, spreading rapidly for almost 20 years. It began in 250 CE in the spring. At the peak of this catastrophe, upwards of 5,000 lives were lost a day in Rome alone. What led to the rapid spread of this disease? Warfare attacks and invasions of infected countries facilitated the mass spread. There were a number of Germanic tribes who invaded the Celtic Gauls, which covers modern-day France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and aspects of the present-day Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany, and Italy. Additionally, Parthians are known to have attacked Mesopotamia, an ancient territory the majority of which is formed through modern-day Iraq, and some parts of the countries we now acknowledge as Iran, Syria, and Turkey. The plague of Cyprian was characterized by more than the illness. This period saw a drastic shift in the numbers of the population. This reduction in manpower, the size of the workforce, and otherwise coincidental circumstances was reflected through extended droughts, floods, and famine. It was who commented that it looked as though the world was coming to an end. Cyprian, having provided a great deal of observations and recorded details, is the namesake of this plague. His work, De Mortalitate, translated to On Mortality, has formed the knowledge both in his present and for our historians' understanding of the wildly contagious disease. He details some of the symptoms of the plague of Cyprian, including diarrhea, vomiting, fever, loss of hearing, loss of sight, paralysis in both the legs and the feet, swelling in the throat, conjunctival bleeding, described as blood filling the eyes of sufferers, and the staining of the mouth with said blood. The vast majority of victims unfortunately did not survive. At the time, the pagan society deemed this to be a punishment from the gods, reflective of the early Christian belief in Mediterranean society that diseases had a supernatural foundation and origin. It was not until this tragedy was very much in the past that historians began to question and search for more scientifically valid explanations. As the search for a more valid explanation emerged, scholars have suggested this plague was one of several diseases known to have been widely present in the 3rd century, having a devastating impact upon the empire. On this list of potential candidates were the bubonic plague, typhus, cholera, smallpox, measles, and anthrax. As we gained a greater understanding throughout the centuries, we have been able to eliminate some of these possibilities. For example, a lack of swellings being a symptom reduces the likelihood of the bubonic plague. Despite much of this confusion, a significant breakthrough came in 2014. Bodies were discovered from what used to be Thebes. Here we learned that efforts had been made to prevent the plague from spreading, including covering corpses with lime and burning the bodies. Unfortunately, the hot climate of Egypt left no trace of DNA able to be extracted, suggesting we may never find a definitive answer as to what this unidentified disease was. This strange tragedy has been a topic of research for centuries and appears as though it will continue to be for years, decades, and even centuries to come. So what do you make of these three incredible discoveries? The mountains are home to many mysteries, beautiful landscapes, Instagram-worthy photographs, and a hiker's dream. Though these stunning views often come at a cost, the mountains are known to be dangerous places with disappearances, accidents, and other unsolved cases arising all too frequently. So today, we'll be taking a look at these three unsolved missing persons cases. Ali Naduri. Whilst 2020 was a nightmare of a year for many, Ali Naduri and his family and friends have undoubtedly had it worse than the majority of us. August was the start of an awful period for this particular family. As of August 23, 2020, Ali Naduri went missing from his hike. The 52-year-old is reportedly an avid hiker, frequently embarking upon the Eagle Mountain Path sand trails, so it is unlikely he simply lost his way whilst adventuring. Visiting as often as daily, Naduri surely felt safe enough to journey this hike alone, as he was confident that he knew his paths, a mistake we are sure he regrets. There was a large clue presented to the research teams. He was caught on film at the hiking trail. In Eagle Mountain, Canada, a camera placed on the trail captured Naduri on what was possibly his final hike. Whilst on the surface this seemed incredibly reassuring, it failed to give any new details as to where the team could find Naduri. An army of volunteers, approximately 40 to 60 in number, were a part of this search team, hoping to find Ali Naduri alive and well. This group of good-hearted people were led by the Coquitlam Search and Rescue, with individual teams from North Vancouver and Lions Bay aiding in the rescue of Naduri too. After some initial searching, the police concluded there did not seem to have been any deliberate or other foul play, with no leads of evidence to suggest this. The case had been referred to as likely being a hiker who was simply unprepared for the conditions and had somehow gotten lost. Many interested in the case have deemed this unlikely due to Naduri often visiting Eagle Mountain. So why would he have decided to deviate from a trail he knows inside out? Michael McLaughlin concluded the search stating, "Given the time frame that Naduri has been his lack of supplies and the vast backcountry where he went missing, it doesn't make sense to continue searching and potentially put our SAR teams at risk." He had prefixed this though, highlighting that the volunteers within the search and rescue team had searched all the possible trails, as well as many off-trail and more risky routes Naduri may have taken. It was after 7 days of searching that the search came to a halt. Having accumulated a search team with the manpower of 183 pairs of eyes on hand and 48,000 square meters of land having been looked over, it was seemingly increasingly unlikely that the hunt for Naduri would become a success story. Although it is a devastating decision for the authorities to have to make, it seems to be one with the intention of protecting all of the volunteers helping on this recovery mission. As the further the search expanded, the more dangerous the land became, and the certainty and chances of finding Naduri continued to fall. Despite having GPS, drones, helicopters, and search dogs on the look for Ali Naduri, there has been little success to this story, with him remaining missing with no new news as of March 2021. Pereth Stephen Sue disappearance. In the March of 2019, the life of Dad, Sophin Sue, was torn apart as his eldest son, Pereth Sophin Sue, went missing. Sophin stated in April, a month after the disappearance of his son, that he likes to pretend that his son is simply out living his life with his friends, denying the much more devastating, much more likely truth. Sophin, aged 46, ended his explanation with a simple heart-wrenching until something else comes up. Pereth, who dons the name Stephen amongst his family, went missing after he had been hiking close to the Mount Washington Auto Road, according to statements made from the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department. A week after he was reported missing, which was on the 8th of March 2019, the 21-year-old's car was tracked down to the Pinkham Notch Visitor Center. Included the Fish and Game Conservation Officers, U.S. Forest Service Snow Rangers, Mountain Rescue Services, and Androscoggin Valley Search and Rescue. This broad team each had a different role, be it searching for the missing young man himself or aiding the other branches of this team in getting searchers where they needed to be, namely above the treeline. Unfortunately, this search hit a major bump in the road with tragic consequences early on. Due to deep snow and a lack of clues to follow up with, the search was suspended, leaving his family desperate and wishing for a new lead to guide them closer to finding Stefan. Adding to the distress of the family is his lack of familiarity with hiking, the routes, and the potential dangers of the sport. He had only recently taken on hiking as a new interest, leaving him susceptible to many of the downfalls of novice hikers. We're just hoping that something comes up, but it's just hard with no answers. This brave family highlights what could be one of the hardest aspects of having a missing relative or friend, simply not knowing and always wondering. With authorities having suspended official searches, this united family did not give up. A new search team emerged led by Linda, Stefan's auntie, as the family searched through New Hampshire, looking into surrounding towns. Speaking to owners of shops he may have frequented, such as corner shops and shops specializing in hiking equipment, but to no avail. Even more upsetting, the last conversation that Sofan had with his son had been an argument on March 8th over nothing more than cleaning his room, which had ended with the 21-year-old storming off, perhaps an attempt to comfort themselves. Many family members have used the phrase, "he's an adult," and suggested that perhaps a young man with a close family simply wanted a fresh start, to live his own life away from consequences. As is the case with many tragedies, the parade of internet comments and researchers soon took to the case, for better or for worse. One Reddit user began a post which compiled a series of theories as to what could have happened to Stefan, including him getting lost, though there were a number of searches along the mountain. Some users mentioned that heading north can lead towards notoriously tough sections of the White Mountains, information a newbie may not necessarily have. Another suggestion has been that Stefan took his own life with no desire to be found, and the final most common suggestion as posed by unqualified internet users has been that he genuinely just wanted to disappear and gain a fresh start and new beginning. Regardless as to the reasons for his disappearance, Stefan's family is devastated, and with this case still not having been resolved, the likelihood of a happy ending is decreasing with each passing day. Christopher Lee Cessna missing in 2011. Christopher Lee Cessna was announced missing. The disappearance of Cessna was reported to the Cary Police Department on April 27, 2011. Cessna, aged 45 at the time of the disappearance, would now be 55 as of 2021. The delayed involvement of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park compared to the other harrowing cases discussed is because Christopher Lee Cessna was not a hiker and his family had no reason to believe he was heading to the mountains. So why did the mountainous national park become such a central element to the case? A car was parked at the newfound Gap parking area for a number of weeks, and initially this caused no concern with it often having cars left for long periods of time due to the popular Appalachian Trail that runs through it. However, one particular car was not expected to be there, and many doubt that its owner was hiking. Cessna's 2009 Audi was found at the National Park's car park. Once this connection had been made, park rangers began to search for the missing man, checking the Appalachian Trail, the car park, and any other routes that may connect. Indications that he may have ventured off trail were being actively looked out for, as well as shelter logs for the possibility that his name may have appeared. Tragically, not long before his disappearance, Cessna had been described as seemingly low on hope and fulfillment, and the handgun he is known to have owned was nowhere to be found within his home. Many suspect that he ended his life. It is the nightmare of many parents, family members, and friends to have a loved one go missing and be gripped with uncertainty, and the harshness of the mountains can only heighten those fears. Our thoughts are with those who are missing a loved one. But what do you make of these tragic, unsolved mysteries? Cursed Maori warrior masks. The Maori tribe is a native tribe consisting of Polynesian people in New Zealand. The Maori warriors belonging to this tribe are famous for their warfare skills. They are considered to be extremely brave warriors and sometimes even believed to have some supernatural abilities obtained as a result of extreme rituals. Before going to a battle, each Maori warrior used to carve a statue or mask. Maori people believed that if a warrior who had built his statue or mask died in a battle, his spirit would return to that statue or mask. Many Maori warrior masks are kept at a national museum in New Zealand. These masks were provided by the Maori tribe. They believe that most of these masks have spirits of the ancient warriors trapped inside them. In 2010, the Maori masks made it to the headlines around the world. When the museum issued a statement in which it warned pregnant women to stay away from these masks as it could invoke a curse. According to Maori tradition, the pregnant or menstruating women are considered to be taboo. They believe that the masks and other ancient artifacts are also taboo. And if the two of them come in contact with each other, a curse could be invoked. Iron Crown of Lombardy. According to historians, the Iron Crown of Lombardy was made during the early Middle Ages in the 4th or 5th century. It consists of a large ring of gold that is fitted with a silver band and some precious jewels, all fitted around an iron ring. It is believed that the Iron Crown contains a 1 centimeter wide iron band that was beaten out of one of the nails used at the crucifixion of Jesus. The crown became a symbol of the Kingdom of Lombards. Later it was in the custody of the medieval Kingdom of Italy and was used for the coronation of kings in Italy during the 11th and 14th century. Today, this mysterious ancient relic is present in the Cathedral of Monza, which is located near Milan in Italy. According to the popular tradition, the crown was made by Saint Helena, who was the mother of Constantine the Great. She had discovered a nail from the true cross when she ordered to forge a crown around the beaten nail. She believed that it would bring blessings and good fortune to her son. Later, the crown was passed to Theodoline, who was the princess of the Lombards. She received it as a gift from Pope Gregory the Great. In 628 AD, Princess Theodoline donated the crown to the church in Monza. There has been a strong argument amongst the religious scholars over the authenticity of the nail that was used to forge the crown. To this day, there is no consensus about its authenticity. However, it is kept at the Cathedral of Monza just outside of Milan and is considered to be a secret relic. According to the cathedral authorities, the inner iron ring of the crown is in perfect condition and has shown no signs of rusting, despite being made thousands of years ago. In one of the studies conducted in 1985, it was revealed that magnets do not get attracted to the crown's iron ring. Like many other artifacts associated to Jesus, this artifact is also likely to be a subject of debate amongst historians as well as the religious scholars for many decades to come. L'Anneau de Pierre, one of the strangest discoveries surrounding possible Neolithic structures discovered in the modern day, is that of the discovery of L'Anneau de Pierre located in western France at the base of the hills in Brittany. In fact, the site is so mysterious that next to nothing can be recovered surrounding the remnants of the Neolithic stones that stand in the location. According to researchers, there are roughly 77 standing stones in perfect alignment at the foot of Menus Michael, also known as the Hill of Saint Michel de Brespes. Although standing stones might sound like a rather dull discovery, these stones are traditionally so massive that they rival the stones used to build Stonehenge. They appear to be a part of an age-old phenomenon of standing stones scattered in alignment all around Western Europe, dating as far back as the Middle Bronze Age. In fact, there are more than 50,000 examples of standing stones across Ireland, Great Britain, Brittany, and France, dating back before the creation of Stonehenge and giving credence to the idea of ancient civilizations having once existed in these areas, predating any previously held theories surrounding ancient cities. Due to these mysteries, there have been a number of interesting archaeological theories surrounding these Neolithic structures and their ancient purposes. These theories range from ancient burial sites, massive structures for possible navigation, or large standing structures to get accurate measures of time for native tribes using a primitive form of a sundial. Such theories do not help to explain the placement of the stones, however, as the standing stones of L'Anneau de Pierre are placed in perfect alignment of 77 stones. and many other standing stones seem to lay in perfect alignment following specific directions regardless of where on the world they are placed. This has led some ancient alien conspiracy theorists to believe that the stones were signs for overhead aviation to locate ancient civilizations or acted as signals to show the exact formation of ley lines covering the earth. Zhong and Huahua. Cloning has been a subject of great controversy due to its potential implications on intelligent life. One of the most significant breakthroughs in the field of cloning was made in 1996 when scientists cloned a sheep named Dolly. Since then, cloning has come a long way, and researchers in different parts of the world have been working on perfecting the various cloning techniques. A significant breakthrough was made in the last couple of months of 2017, when a group of scientists used the somatic cell nuclear transfer to clone primates. This is the same technique that was used for cloning Dolly the sheep. Named Zhong and Huahua, monkeys belonging to the Macaca fascicularis species were the first primates to have ever been cloned using somatic cell nuclear transfer. Unlike the previous attempts of cloning monkeys, researchers used the nuclei from the fetal cells instead of the embryonic cells. Zhongzong was born on November 27, 2017, and Hua was born on December 5, 2017. Both primates were cloned at the Institute of Neuroscience of the Chinese Academy of Sciences situated in Shanghai. Before the successful cloning of Zhongzong and Huahua, several attempts had been made in different parts of the world to use somatic cell nuclear transfer for cloning primates. However, these attempts failed, as the embryos could not mature into healthy animals. According to Mu Mingpu, one of the leading scientists at the Institute of Neuroscience, this time the researchers used better microscopy to observe and handle the cells. They also used several compounds to encourage the reprogramming of cells. Although the researchers were able to clone Zhongzong and Huahua, the overall success rate was very low even after using these advanced techniques. Only 2 healthy babies were born out of 60 surrogate mothers. Researchers believe that the perfection of this technique could potentially lead to better understanding and treatment of diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's in humans. Harstein. Harstein of Nal was a Viking chieftain of the late 9th century, known for his attacking voyages in France, Spain, Italy, the Byzantine Empire, and England. A powerful warrior, his name was one that sparked fear to others. As son of Ragnar Lothbrok, Harstein was born into a family of ruthless raiders. In 1859, alongside his brother Bjorn, Harstein led a fleet of 62 ships to raid the Mediterranean. The expedition did not get off to a good start. Harstein was defeated by the Kingdom of Asturias in Spain, and later the Muslims of the Umayyad Caliphate. Thankfully for Harstein, the situation soon improved with the successful sacking of Algeciras and Mazima on the north coast of Africa, followed by further raids into the Balearic Islands. It was on their journey home that Harstein first heard about the famous city of Rome. Hearing about the large amount of treasures that were held there, he decided to change course towards Italy. However, believing they were headed for Rome, Hastin and Bjorn's army actually ended up in the city of Luna. Luna had once been a leading exporter of white Carrara marble, but had now devolved into ruins. Still under the impression Luna was actually Rome, Hastin and Bjorn hatched a plan. First, Harstein sent his emissaries to request food and shelter from the people of Luna and tell them their chieftain was unwell. When their requests were denied by the people of Luna, who were wary of foreign attacks, Harstein's emissaries were sent again into the city. This time, however, they reported that Harstein had died, but on his deathbed had converted to Christianity. The emissaries requested a Christian burial for Harstein, and the gates of Luna were finally opened. However, when Harstein was led into the city in a coffin, he was actually very much alive and fully armed. In the middle of his funeral, he jumped up from the coffin and murdered Luna's bishop and proceeded to sack the city. It was said that when Harstein finally realized the city was Luna and not the famous Rome, he was so embarrassed that he massacred every man in sight. Continuing their journey through Italy, Harstein and Bjorn sacked and ravaged Pisa and Fiesole and raided the Byzantine Empire's territories in the eastern Mediterranean. However, Luck ran out when their ships were attacked by a Moorish fleet in the Strait of Gibraltar. With only 20 ships remaining, Harstein and Bjorn rose to the challenge, and with a severely reduced army still managed to capture the king of Pamplona and ransom him back to his people for 70,000 dinars. Returning home to Loire, Harstein and Bjorn had lost 2/3 of their men, but in the process had become extremely rich. Settled back in France, it didn't take Harstein long to grow restless. He soon allied himself with Solomon, the king of Brittany, and fought against the Franks in 866. He went on to ravage Bourges, Orleans, and Angers before finally being expelled from Loire County by Charles the Bald. Harstein soon looked towards England for riches and plunder. At the grand age of 71 years old, Harstein was still powerful enough to cross into England with an army of 80 ships and occupy the village of Milton in Kent, while his allies landed at Appledore with 250 ships. Alfred the Great feared the Vikings so much he positioned his army between the two to stop them from uniting. In response, Harstein and his forces retreated to Essex, which they used as a base to raid Mercia. However, when the bulk of his men were out raiding, his fort was captured along with the ships, cargo, women, and children, which included Harstein's wife and children, by the army of eastern Essex. Soon after, Harstein launched another attack along the Thames Valley, but was pursued by a Mercian and West Saxon army, and eventually was trapped at Buttingdon. This resulted in the Battle of Buttingdon in 893, where Harstein's men were victorious. But once more, when moving to Chester, Harstein's men were attacked by the Mercians, who attempted to starve them by removing any livestock and destroying all the crops in the area. Harstein reacted by leading a revenge raid along the Thames Valley and the River Severn to a new fort on the River Lee. The raid was cut short when Alfred caught up with the army and obstructed the River Lee on either side. Finally, Harstein's forces gave in and abandoned their camp and sent their women back home, where they soon followed. At this point, Harstein disappears from the history books. A lifetime of ravaging and raiding dozens of cities across many kingdoms in Europe and North Africa, Harstein had earned himself the title as the lusty and terrifying old warrior of the Loire and the Somme. Mysterious FBI seizure. On the 7th of January 1943, Tesla was found in his hotel room collapsed on the floor with a suspected death caused by coronary thrombosis at the age of 86, while still in New York. Though many have often argued his true cause of death, few doubt the newly declassified evidence of the Federal Bureau of Investigation going into Tesla's hotel room shortly after his death and retrieving all of the inventor's notes and papers under the ownership of the United States government. Given the context of the year, at the height of the Second World War, the United States government had heard of the claims that Nikola Tesla had invented a weapon that he referred to as a death ray, and feared that such a weapon in the hands of their enemies could prove to change the tide of the war dramatically. It is for this reason that the United States military claimed that the retrieval and study of the inventor's notes were of the highest issue of national security, and led to the FBI seizure of more than 2 truckloads of notes written by the inventor. Even more peculiar, however, the United States government would send an engineer by the name of Dr. John G. Trump, the current president, Donald Trump's uncle, to investigate the claims of the death ray and retrieve the supposed briefcase containing the weapon from the Hotel New Yorker. After almost 10 years of legal battle, Tesla's nephew, Sava Kasanovic, was declared the rightful owner of all of Nikola Tesla's estate, and was provided the government-retrieved materials and notes sent to his house in Belgrade, Serbia. Oddly enough, even though the FBI recorded roughly 80 trunks of the notes that were recovered from the hotel, only 60 trunks were sent to Belgrade, leaving many to assume that the remaining 20 trunks are still being hidden by the United States government to this day. New dinosaur colors and designs. As paleontologists have spent the last several decades uncovering a wide variety of fossilized remains of prehistoric creatures across the Earth's distant past, they have made a number of incredible discoveries surrounding the classification of dinosaurs and their prehistoric behaviors. Such findings include full dinosaur skeletons, millions of individual species, modern-day descendants, and entire sites of sudden mass graves indicating periods in history of mass extinction events able to be clearly defined. Many of these discoveries helped the world of paleontology to recreate accurate depictions of such animals, with the sole exception that the colors of the species have long since been a mystery. Up until 2006, researchers believed that it would be impossible to ever uncover the mystery as to what a dinosaur's true colors were, given the fact that the pigments in the skin did not, and in the special cases in which textures of the skin were preserved or feathers of dinosaurs recovered, there was little proof as to whether the pigments recorded were the actual pigments of the dinosaur or were caused via chemical processes over time. Back in 2006, however, lead researcher Jacob Vinther made an incredible discovery surrounding fossilized ink sacs of 200-million-year-old squid species that demonstrated interesting ways in which the ink preserved itself over countless eons. This led to the research uncovering new methods at locating traces of color pigments that could have survived within the feathers of dinosaurs and could be worked with to recreate a more accurate depiction of the ancient creature's colors. Although this theory was immediately questioned, with opponents claiming that his findings were nothing more than fossilized bacteria deposits, it was not until 2010 that his findings proving his findings. This has led to a number of new discoveries, with previously held theories surrounding color and camouflage being completely thrown out the window as the true colors of long-forgotten species are being discovered for the first time. Previously held theories had assumed that dinosaurs possessed nothing more than dull colors of browns, grays, and blacks, similar to how large animals today such as elephants and whales possess such colors. However, using this new theory, researchers are now aware of the tremendously wide-ranging and bright colors used by ancient species, including the Anchiornis huxley, of which is now known to have possessed a bright red crest with black and white stripes across its body. Black Lady of Bradley Woods. Back in 1460, during the War of the Roses, a strange story was told that spoke of a young woodsman, his wife, and their baby son that lived in a small cottage located within the Bradley Woods. According to the legend, the woodsman went off to fight in the Civil War to protect his home, and so every day the wife took the baby to wait by the edge of the forest to wait for the husband to come home. After some time had passed with no information of the returning husband, the wife noticed strange people, of whom were most likely the enemy army that were crossing the Humber. As she tried to race back to her cottage, she was attacked by 3 men who assaulted her and took her baby. In a desperate delusion, the wife then began searching everywhere for the husband and son all throughout the forest before collapsing from exhaustion. It's the story that has led to the myth of the Black Lady of Bradley Woods. The story that parents tell their children within the village of Bradley, Lincolnshire, with the warning that if their children are not in bed before dark, then the Black Lady of the Woods would take you thinking you were her child. Who put Bella in the Wych Elm? Seen as one of the biggest mysteries surrounding the United Kingdom, the question who put Bella in the Wych Elm has gone on to directly impact popular culture and leave many wondering what really happened back in 1941, involving an unsolved homicide case that detectives were a little too quick to dismiss. Back on the 18th of April in 1943, located on the Hagley estate belonging to Lord Cobham, 4 boys found the decomposed remains of a human body stuck inside the hollow trunk of a large wych elm tree. This led to an immediate investigation made by the local police, who used the help of Professor James Webster, a forensic examiner, to better deconstruct the nature of the killing and locate any clues as to how the murder took place. He found that the body belonged to an unidentified Jane Doe, of whom had been strangled, given the evidence of pieces of a taffeta discovered in her mouth. Webster then concluded that the body was most likely placed within the hollow trunk of the tree while it was still warm, and the killing had been fresh due to the fact that rigor mortis, once set in, would prevent it from having been stuffed inside the trunk. Unfortunately, the police were unable to identify the body of the woman, and so no further action had been taken when it came to the investigation of the murder of the Jane Doe, and the murder was immediately deemed a cold case. It was not until 1944 when a strange graffiti message popped up related to the mystery that said, "Who put Bella down the Wych Elm? Hagley Wood." Not only did this help give investigators a clue as to the identity of the individual, but it shows that a secret conspiracy had been brewing amongst anonymous individuals, keeping tabs on the investigation. Shortly thereafter, police were able to identify a missing woman from a 1944 report concerning a prostitute that had worked on the Hagley Road, reportedly having gone missing back in 1941. Unfortunately, Given the nature of the woman's line of work, the police would not continue an investigation into the matter further. Today, the answer to the question who put Bella down the wych elm remains a mystery. Monte Prima Giants. The discovery of the giants of Monte Prima in Sardinia has enchanted experts for decades. The stone sculptures were first unearthed in the area of Monte Prima located near the village of Cabris when a farmer experienced extreme difficulty plowing his land. Taking a closer look, he was shocked to find a stone remnant sticking up from the ground, which after digging unveiled itself to be a humongous stone head with double carved eyes. This marked the first sighting of the Monte Prima giants in centuries. Between 1975 and 1979, 5,000 pieces were recovered from the site, which ranged from heads and torsos of statues to large models of buildings, sacred stones, and giants' graves. The exact date the statues were created is still unclear. Hypotheses have fluctuated between the final Bronze Age and Iron Age. What is certain, though, is the Monte Prima giants mark the first statues of that size and nature discovered in European history. Archaeologist Miriam Schaff-Baumeth calls it the most extraordinary find of the century in the realm of art history. But the knowledge coming from the Monte Prima giants goes a lot further than art history. It teaches us a considerable amount about Sardinian culture nearly 3,000 years ago. The material of the statues show that Sardinia with access to exported goods such as metal through worldwide trade. Furthermore, the aesthetic of the statues with their double-carved eyes is one not seen before and reveals avant-garde techniques of the time which must have come from the different cultures and artistic influences in Sardinia. The layout of the statues when discovered is also extremely interesting. Alongside the discovery of the Monte Prima statues were numerous stone slabs and tombs with large statues placed above them, almost as if the statues were there to guard this site. Furthermore, not all the statues look like they were stone warriors. 2 statues in particular have been discovered which look different to the others. These 2 statues are wearing footwear and cone-shaped headwear, the clothing that would have been adorned by a magician or a priest. This has led experts to believe the site was once a haroun, a type of sanctuary dedicated to a hero. They suggest this haroun might have been used by the Sardinians to celebrate deceased nobles. A final mystery still remains, namely why the statues were destroyed into 1,000 pieces. Some of the deconstruction was partially brutal. Statues have had their heads taken off and their eye lines erased. Whether these impressive sculptures were destroyed by explorers, internal wars, or conquerors is unknown, and it looks like it will remain that way. If you're someone who doesn't want to work a corporate job and doesn't like the idea of working 9 to 5, then becoming an archaeologist might be your calling. Archaeologists are responsible for some of history's most incredible finds. Every so often, though, they come across some strange artifacts. One of those is that of the Paracas skull, which are best known for their elongated look. One photograph is making the rounds showing what looks like a piece of metal which has been embedded inside the skull. It quickly got shared by people who said it then looked like a large microchip, or it could be some type of ancient technology that was used by our ancestors. Although many labeled the photograph as fake, saying that it was likely photoshopped in order to get it like this, the image is actually real and was first posted by the Museum of Osteology. The Museum of Osteology made the post on social media, and since putting it up, it's gone viral. They said the following in the post: "Not on public display. A proven elongated skull with metal surgically implanted after returning from battle. Estimated to be from around 2,000 years ago. One of our more interesting and oldie pieces in the collection. We don't have a ton of background on this piece, but we do know he survived the procedure. Based on the broken bone structure surrounding the repair, you can see that it's tightly fused together. It was a successful surgery." End quote. Many commented on the post saying how incredible this artifact is, but were equally confused as to how such a procedure would be carried out. One person said the following: "What type of metal is this? Has that been tested? How did they manage to get this inside someone during a time like this? It looks very well done." End quote. Well, another person said the following: "This metal inlay is incredible. It really shows us how little we know about our ancient history. Who would have thought that something like this was possible? It's incredible to think the person survived this. I'm not sure though I'd like to have a piece of metal fused to my skull without an aesthetic. It makes you wonder what other discoveries are out there waiting to be found." End quote. This isn't the only interesting find in regards to these skulls. Researchers who work closely with the Praco skulls have said they've made some new discoveries. These skulls were first discovered in the Pracos region of Peru, a desert on the south coast of the country. Julio Teo, a proven archaeologist, was the first to discover these astonishing skulls in 1928. What initially stood out as the most unusual among the skulls was that they were the longest and most protracted skulls to have ever been found before. Over 300 were found, dating back between 2,000 and 300 years old. It wasn't until 2014 when DNA testing revealed unusual findings. It showed that they have mitochondrial DNA with strange mutations that have not been seen in animals or humans before. The elongated skulls were just the tip of the iceberg. While skulls may become elongated due to deformities or applying force on the skull for a long period of time, this was certainly not the case with the Paracas skulls. A researcher by the name of L.A. Marcelli took note of more than a few characteristics that don't fit the norm for a standard human skull. The eye sockets were found to be much larger. The cheekbones were much more pronounced than the skull's weight, 60% more than that of a normal human skull. He also looked to a specific point of the skull known as the foramen magnum. On a human skull, it's situated closer to the jawline, whereas it was closer to the back of the skull on the Paracas ones. After studying over 1,000 skulls, archaeologists also noticed that the frame and magma were smaller, leading them to theorize that it's a genetic trait. This caused them to further research the Paracas skulls, investigating every part in great detail. Experts eventually noticed that they were missing a sagittal suture, which is found on all human skulls and is a piece of tissue that connects the two parietal bones in the skull. Although not all Pracar skulls were devoid of a sagittal suture, most didn't appear to have one at all. This brought upon more confusion and intrigue to those involved in the research. As research continued, 3 skulls were used to sample DNA, one of which was an infant dating back 800 to 2,000 years ago, whilst wearing protective clothing to ensure the samples wouldn't be contaminated. The samples were sent to 3 different labs in Canada and the United States, and the geneticists weren't given many details to reduce the risk of creating preconceived notions about the skulls. The DNA results were nothing short of fascinating. They came back explaining that one of the samples found that the hair samples wasn't a sequence found in human DNA. However, the other samples were showing that they came mostly from Eastern Europe and some from Western Europe. When looking at the bone powder, they found that it originated from Mesopotamia, otherwise known as Syria. Many questions still remain. People are torn over the 2014 DNA analysis of the recovered skulls. That showed that gathered DNA from the remains contained mutations that did not match any non-human or primate DNA samples previously recorded. Although the DNA testing was immediately put into question by the scientific community, the lead researcher stands by the results and asks for those within the scientific community to confirm his findings and take their own tests to show the validity of his claims. It may still take many years before experts are able to provide an adequate explanation for the unusual findings, with some saying that the practice goals will remain a mystery, so we'll have to draw our own conclusions for now. Who knows, maybe this discovery will bring about more news and provide us with the insight needed to better understand the human race and our untraceable history. So what do you make of these interesting discoveries? Also, what do you make of the metal that was surgically implanted after this individual returned from battle? These days, it can seem like archaeologists and researchers are making mind-blowing discoveries each and every minute. We are only starting to scratch the surface of what we can potentially uncover. So today, we'll be taking a look at these 3 recent discoveries. The ice fishermen imagine waking up on a cold, blustery winter morning in Minnesota and deciding to go ice fishing. The air is crisp and clear, the temperature well below freezing, and the nearby lake. Lake Waconia has just recently frozen over for the winter season. This is prime time for some Arctic-style angling. This is precisely what one resident of Carver County, Minnesota decided to do on December 20th, 2016. That was the morning that would change his life forever. The ice fisherman packed up his gear and set out for a day of ice fishing. He was excited to participate in this Midwest tradition and had even purchased some fancy new gear to help make his experience all the more immersive. Among his new toys was an underwater camera that could be held beneath the ice and scanned for nearby fish. As he set up shop on the ice, he brought out his video camera and dropped it into the fishing hole he had carved into the fragile ice crust. As he scanned, he saw several varieties of his favorite fish, but the camera also picked up an object that was decidedly larger than any creature that lived under the ice. Nearly 1 month before, Andrew John Stifer, also a Carver County resident, had paddled out onto Lake Waconia before it froze over to indulge in one of his favorite pastimes, nature photography. His wife and 2 children were expecting him to arrive home that evening, but he never returned. A missing persons report was filed and an extensive search was launched by the Carver County Sheriff's Office. The search spanned the entire area around the lake and even included a highly trained dive team who were dispatched to search the very bottom of the lake. Andrew John Stifer was never found. That was until the ice fisherman took out his fancy new camera to scan for fish, only to discover the body of Mr. Stifer, frozen over and stuck beneath the ice. He promptly called the sheriff's department and notified him of what he had discovered. Divers were again dispatched to recover the body, and Lieutenant Patrick Berry was tasked with the unfortunate job of informing Mrs. Stifer and her 2 children that their beloved husband and father would not be returning home after this tragic accident. Dead Sea Scrolls and world's oldest basket. The importance of the famous Dead Sea Scrolls and their impact on all major Western religions cannot be understated. Found in the Bedouin shepherds between 1946 and 1956, the Dead Sea Scrolls contained long-forgotten biblical texts and statutes pertaining to early Jewish and Hebrew religious practices. The texts have great historical, religious, and linguistic significance, because they include the second oldest known surviving manuscripts of works later included in the Hebrew Bible canon, and fundamentally changed the perspective of Judeo-Christian scholars around the world. The scrolls were found in the Qumran caves in the Judean desert, just off the northern coast of the Dead Sea in the Jordan Rift Valley. In the time since they were discovered, this sacred land has laid nearly silent. That all changed early last year when a team of Israeli archaeologists decided to take one more look at one cave in particular, the Cave of Horrors. The foreboding cave got its name after archaeologists discovered the skeletons of nearly 40 men, women, and children who had perished centuries ago, likely as they fled a crusading Roman legion. But the Cave of Horrors is also a cave of secrets. As the archaeologists rappelled into the nearly inaccessible cave, they did not expect to left behind by the deceased group of people. But instead of clothing, baubles, and other bits and pieces, the archaeologists discovered small bits of parchment that lay relatively untouched in a remote area of the cavern. Upon further examination, the bits of parchment were confirmed to be from the Dead Sea Scrolls. This discovery jolted the archaeological and historical communities around the world. New information on the origins of Judaism and Christianity. The find was practically unheard of. The IAA, short for Israeli Antiquities Authority, said the scrolls it found were Greek translations of the books of Zechariah and Nahum from the Book of the 12 Minor Prophets, and were radiocarbon dated to the 2nd century AD. The name of God is written in Hebrew. One fragment read, "These are the things you are to do. Speak the truth to one another. Render true and perfect justice in your gates." Profound words from history indeed. Additionally, among the bits of parchment from the Dead Sea Scrolls, another even older artifact was found, a woven basket now believed to be the oldest woven basket in the world. The basket stood nearly 2 feet wide and was found in near-perfect condition. Carbon dating places its creation nearly 10,000 years ago, well before the age of pottery and clay earthenware, making the discovery even more important. the overall understanding of human tool-making capabilities. So why was this hidden cave so full of history-defining secrets? During the reign of Roman Emperor Hadrian, war was waged against the Jewish population, forcing many into hiding. Roman legions would stalk and scour the territory north of the Dead Sea to root out any Jewish rebel factions who dared oppose the emperor. But luckily, many of these rebels were able to escape with the aid of the complex cave that surround the Judean desert. Their families were likely forced into hiding and took their most valuable items with them into their secluded refuge to protect them from being destroyed. 3.6 million-year-old ancestor. Remember the iconic Beatles tune Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Many students across the globe will have heard the tale of the excavation team who first discovered Lucy, or Australopithecus afarensis, as she's known to scholars one of the first humans ever discovered. The archaeologists would blast the Beatles tune around their campsite, and when the time came to name their discovery, they had a certain song stuck in their head. For many years, Lucy was thought to be the oldest human ever found, as she was able to walk upright and more closely resembled modern-day humans than she did modern-day apes. But a recent discovery has shed light on the history of our bipedal ancestors and revealed something quite shocking. We have been walking on two legs for a lot longer than we thought. Described by some as Lucy's great-grandfather, a new hominid skeleton was recently unearthed during an archaeological dig in Ethiopia. Led by Dr. Johannes Haile Selassie, an international team discovered the partial skeleton of an advanced human-like creature that is far older than old Lucy. In fact, around 400,000 years older. Nicknamed Kadanamu, meaning big man in the local language, the partially intact skeleton is that of a bipedal male who stood roughly 5.5 feet tall and had pelvic bones that allowed for an easy two-legged stride. Lucy was only 3 feet tall and likely had a much smaller gait than her newly discovered ancestor. So what does this tell us about the whole history of human evolution? Well, much of that answer remains to be analyzed, but what can be definitively stated is that, in terms of direct ancestors, humanity is far older than previously realized. We were walking upright nearly 4 million years ago. The discovery of Australopithecus anamensis, as Kadanamu is scientifically known, has unequivocally changed the established chronology of human history and has given scientists infinitely more data to work with in their quest to understand our origins. But what do you make of these three discoveries? NASA's International Space Station is one of the most impressive structures we put in space. The cameras that are attached to the ISS are constantly streaming, allowing anyone to view the incredible sights that it beams back to us. The International Space Station has 4 high-definition cameras, and on NASA's websites there's live cameras that allow you to watch what's going on above our planet. The most recent discovery is that of a strange-looking object that was picked up by one of the cameras. As with most of these types of images, they usually end up on social media. The user who posted this one said they captured the photograph earlier today. They said the following: "I'm not sure if anyone else was watching the space cameras earlier today, but if they were, did they see this thing? I saw it come into view for around 10 seconds, and then fly out of frame. The ISS travels fast, so I wasn't able to observe it for long. I quickly saw it and so took a screenshot. I'm not saying that it's anything of interest, but I thought I'd post it and see if anyone saw the same thing. Before I carry on, NASA have said the space above our planet is littered with debris, and that sometimes when the International Space Station passes above us, these pieces of debris get picked up on. It doesn't mean it explains everything picked up by the ISS, but it's something to keep in mind. As pointed out by those who saw the image, this doesn't look like a typical piece of space debris. Some users even went on to say that this object looks like the mysterious Oumuamua, a strange space object that was detected flying through our solar system back in 2017. Interestingly, this isn't the first time that an object this shape has been seen close to the International Space Station. Others who often watch the live feeds have said they've seen similar-looking objects, and say that they never seem to stick around for too long. Skeptics have suggested that these objects could be things like old rocket boosters, or other things of similar shape. And although this is a good suggestion, as some have pointed out, these types of objects don't seem to act like pieces of debris. with some noticing that they can turn and move in the opposite direction to other pieces of debris. Another person said the following: I sometimes go on and watch the International Space Station, and you do sometimes see things flicker by. One of the things I've noticed is that you can very quickly tell the difference between a piece of space debris and one of these objects. That's not to say that these objects are proof of aliens. But I do find it funny when debris is put forward as the leading theory as to what these objects are. That's definitely not what people are seeing here. These objects are able to move very quickly, flying down towards Earth and in some cases shooting off into the cosmos. I'm not here to convince people, but I think we should stop labeling these as debris." End quote. As of right now, what these objects are and how they're able to do what they do is still heavily debated. It seems that the International Space Station is no stranger to odd events. Perhaps one of the most chilling was that of the water buildup incident. Described as one of the most unexplainable circumstances is that of the water buildup incident that happened during a routine spacewalk on the International Space Station. Back in July 2013, American astronaut Chris Cassidy and Italian astronauts Luca Parmitano were performing a 6-hour and 50-minute planned spacewalk when suddenly Parmitano told the astronauts and other space agencies that it felt as if the back of his head had just suddenly become wet. Understanding the dangers of water buildup on the inside of a suit during a spacewalk, Parmitano quickly tried to address and solve the issue in the hopes of the event not compromising the spacewalk that the team had just started an hour prior. Luca believed that his drink bag had possibly sprung a leak and was the main cause of the water buildup, and so quickly responded by removing and getting rid of his drink to solve the issue. Oddly enough, it appeared that water continued to build up inside the Zund. The dangers with water in space is that, unlike on Earth, the surface tension of the water causes the compound to build up on the sod of the surfaces, and could potentially cover the entire face of the person, preventing them from breathing. The flight director, David Korth, immediately began to worry after Parmitano claimed the water buildup had suddenly begun covering his ears, making it next to impossible to hear of the helmet's intercom systems. This led to the astronaut being told to find his way back to the airlock door and to enter and stay inside the International Space Station until the cause of the leak could be better understood. This proved to be a problem as the water began covering the eyes of the astronaut. He also had no tether to find his way back to the airlock, so he was essentially blind. Luckily, the astronauts are already trained in such incidents and are well aware of the ledges and ladders to grab onto. Further investigation into what could have potentially caused the buildup failed to bring up any real answers. The drink bag turned out to not be the cause, and engineers failed to find any evidence of any of the cooling systems malfunctioning. A few causes were suggested, but it just highlights how unpredictable these spacewalks can be. So what do you make of this interesting photograph? What do you think these things are? And have any of you seen anything similar? Mars Curiosity rover is part of NASA's Mars Science Laboratory mission. It was launched on the 26th of November 2011, and it landed on Mars in early August 2012. NASA has said that Curiosity has been vital in helping them to understand the terrain of Mars, and this will help with upcoming Mars missions. In recent years, the Curiosity has sent back many images, and a few of these have been of this mysterious light could be seen allegedly hovering above large rock formations. Those who saw the image immediately started to ask NASA what it was, with some questioning whether the rover had just captured an unidentified flying object. Although at the time NASA didn't comment on this photograph, they had commented on others which showed similar looking lights, saying these have nothing to do with unidentified flying objects and are likely sun reflections, saying that they've seen similar looking anomalies in photographs and they were created due to the sun's rays reflecting off a nearby rock. Although this is the theory that's been put forward by the space agency, some people aren't buying it and have said that in the past they've seen mysterious objects hovering above the Martian sky. This has led to various different theories being put forward to try and explain them. One person said the following: "I don't know why NASA is so against the idea of labeling something as an unidentified flying object. It's so weird the relationship they have with UFOs. It seems they do everything in their power to not label something as an unknown object. There's nothing wrong with labeling something as a UFO. You're not admitting that it's alien life. You're just saying it's an object that can't be identified at that moment in time. End quote. Others who have looked through Mars apps and old Mars images have said they think it's a UFO though, going on to say that it even looks to be in the shape of a craft. For years now, people have said they've seen odd-looking things on the Martian surface, and it's caused them to question what actually happened here. Scientists will tell us that Mars is a planet that doesn't host life, and that, as of right now, we've never found any evidence to suggest that life once existed there. But amateur researchers have claimed to have found various anomalies that go against this. One of these is the alleged animals that can be found scattered across the Martian surface. Probably one of the most well-known ones is that of the Mars rat and the Mars crab. This photograph was first discovered back in 2015, and those who saw it said it reminded them of the facehuggers from the Alien franchise. Some who study the image have said you can make out 8 legs, while many argued about its size, with guesses ranging from a few feet to the size of a car. As mentioned though, NASA are against the idea of labeling these objects as UFOs or animals, and have said that as of right now they've never seen anything that suggests that UFOs are out there, and that they are able to explain every object that they photographed. A statement that I should point out is often criticized by many. Those who believe that Mars was once inhabited in the past have said that NASA have failed to comment on certain images. But skeptics have said the reason NASA doesn't reply is because there's so many of these alleged anomalies, and it will take them forever to reply to each individual. Skeptics have said that NASA have replied in the past, and the people don't believe them when they present their answers. One of the answers they presented in the past to explain away these anomalies is that of pareidolia. Today, people are still finding and debating photographs that are sent back from Mars. This isn't the only Curiosity discovery. NASA said that the Curiosity rover found evidence of Martian bacteria. Only a few years ago, NASA made an incredible discovery, in which the initial signs of life on Mars arose for NASA astrobiologists and research scientists back in 2004, and then again later confirmed back during the landing of the Martian probe. The private space agency originally saw signs of a methane plume ejecting from the surface of Mars, and began to quickly theorize its implications as an organic molecule, of which only finds natural formation via the creation of a variety of bacteria. After many sleepless nights, engineers of the space agency worked to send a Martian rover with the capability of testing the Martian surface for additional organic molecules. Later, in 2014, Martian rover Curiosity began collecting evidence of methane traces in the Martian atmosphere and made a startling discovery. The Martian rover found that the methane on Mars grew more concentrated by seasons in the Martian atmosphere, directly correlated with the Martian seasons overall. This led researchers to believe that this correlation between the concentration by seasons was additional proof to the hypothesis that Mars contains some form of life. Methane is also an organic molecule, and the majority of methane on Earth also correlates with our seasons, as certain bacteria and microbes eject this organic molecule into the atmosphere during the summer and autumn seasons, similar to what the data shows in spikes of methane across the Martian atmosphere. Although definitive signs of life have yet to be observed on the red planet, the odds of this observation seem to be more and more promising with the passing years, as Curiosity uncovers additional complex organic molecules and continues its drilling processes to locate biosignatures of life. This has led many researchers to theorize that the formation of these bacteria could have taken place over millions of years, as well as the fact that they could have been at one point in time far more complex life on the surface of Mars, before the complete removal of its atmosphere, leading to a number of extremophiles still existing on the Martian surface today. As of right now, NASA plans to put humans on Mars by 2033. SpaceX have said they plan to be the first to put humans on the red planet, saying that they want to do this by 2030. So what do you make of this interesting photograph that was taken by the Curiosity rover? Do you think it shows an unidentified flying object? Or is this a sunray reflecting off a nearby rock? Man first landed on the moon in 1969 and is recorded as a new phase in humans' technological advancement. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration has been responsible for numerous incredible achievements and has made countless discoveries. It's one of the most prestigious research agencies in the world and one of the first to conduct space explorations. Since the first launch of a ship in space, there have been many technological advances and discoveries, whose protagonists have been the agency's researchers. The Apollo missions will go down in history as being one of humans' most impressive themes. As stated on NASA's website, Apollo 17 was the last lunar landing mission. 3 EVA activities lasted a total of 22 hours and 4 minutes on the lunar surface. End quote. Some of these photographs, though, allegedly show more than what they intended. Amateur researchers who were looking through old Apollo 17 images decided to zoom in and view the background. Once they did this, though, they quickly noticed that something strange could be seen hovering in the background. Theorists stated that the craft is triangular in shape and matches those that are commonly seen on Earth. These triangular UFOs have been seen on our planet for years now, with pilots coming forward in detailing similar-looking crafts. After being shared on an online UFO group, one of the members said the following: "It's tedious work, but if you have the time, many of these objects can be found in old Apollo images. They match the triangle UFO that so many have seen, displaying the 3 lights that the craft often gives off." End quote. Another person said the following: "I don't get how people can deny that these crafts have been seen. It's amazing to think that they have the ability to hover above our moon. People have been seeing the exact same crafts on our planet for years. It's not like we've never seen anything like this before." A simple Google search will show you all of the triangle crafts that are photographed every year. The next question that needs to be put forward is, what are these things? And who owns them? If they are ours, then we're basically admitting that we have tech that's able to take us into space. And this was during the 70s. End quote. Other amateur researchers have said that similar-looking triangular crafts can also be seen in earlier Apollo missions, including Apollo 11. One skeptic, however, spoke out about this alleged UFO and said the following: "What I find interesting about this photograph is that these are the same people who claim we never went to the moon. And yet, here we have a photograph of an alleged UFO. It seems that these types of people can't make up their mind on whether we actually went or not. From looking at the photograph, to me, it just looks like a camera anomaly, or possibly a small piece of space debris. The only thing we have to go by is a tiny object in the corner of an image. And I'm sure if we zoomed in on many of the Apollo images, we'd find something similar. For me, this is completely natural." End quote. NASA also gets a lot of questions in regards to UFOs, and one of these came from a user on Twitter. They asked the following: "And though that it's true, Apollo 11 did spot a UFO. If so, is it true that these radios could pick up Apollo 11 saying that the other spacecraft were spotted on the crater on the edge of the moon and were much more advanced than the Apollo 11 technology?" Dr. David Morrison, who served as an institute director at NASA, said the following to the question: "I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you are repeating stories that are known to be false. No astronauts saw UFOs. There are no secret Apollo transmissions, radio or television picked up by hams. There was no case of Apollo astronauts spotting other spacecraft on crater rooms or anywhere else." End quote. Other skeptics point out, however, that these small dots can't be taken seriously, and that what we're most likely seeing is just some type of photographic anomaly. NASA has backed this up and said that the majority of these can be explained either as dust particles on the lens or other space anomalies that happen to get picked up. Others, however, disagree with this idea and have said this isn't the first time that a strange-looking object has been photographed in space, going on to say that it's not like NASA and other space agencies are going to admit that they know about UFOs, with one believer saying that the day they admit they're real is the day that they're essentially admitting that they've lied to the, as UFO researchers point out, the moon is actually one place where many alleged UFOs have been captured, with researchers saying there's more going on around our moon than what we're being told. Another place where these mysterious crafts have been seen is that of the International Space Station. Astronomers have said these objects can be explained using everyday things, but people have struggled to explain some of the objects that have been seen close to the International Space Station. with amateur researchers saying that some of these are definitely not space debris. With one UFO researcher saying the following, "I understand that some of these objects can be explained as space debris, and that makes sense, but it's obvious that some of these are not space debris. Also, if this was the case, why does the space station cameras shut off when they come into view? If they were just space debris, why shut down the live feed? Is this kind of behavior that makes people question these objects?" End quote. It seems that the topic of UFOs and interest around it is at an all-time high, with some even believing that the government will be coming forward with some credible evidence in regard to the topic. Time will tell whether the government knows more than what they're letting on. So what do you guys make of this photograph taken on the moon? Do you think it shows a triangular object? Or do you think it's just a photographic anomaly? It's no secret that the CIA has conducted a variety of experiments, many of which have been released through certain networks and channels. In the pursuit of knowledge, scientists and researchers have been known to push the boundaries of ethical thinking. For the sake of medical and technological breakthroughs, they could help change the world, either for the better or the worse. However, when such unethical experiments are being conducted right under your nose, private institutions and universities all across the United States, it makes you wonder what else these people are getting up to. The Central Intelligence Agency has a long history of ties to illegal activity, morally questionable decisions, and dark experimentation that seems to border on the insane. Regardless of their actions, it seems that nearly every new declassified document seems to uncover more and more impossible to explain, or even worse, impossible to justify experiments that continue to bring to light just how far the CIA is willing to go to gather their intelligence. One of their less extreme files revealed that the U.S. agency was interested in the mysterious Mount Ararat anomaly. This was after a spy plane took several photographs of a patch of ice on the mountain. It was first spotted during 1949 while the United States Air Force was doing a flyover, and at the time it was labeled a secret. The CIA would go on to investigate this anomaly for the next few years, with some documents suggesting that they couldn't come to a conclusive answer for what the object was. The document was called Noah's Ark of Mount Ararat, and it shows that the Central Intelligence Agency did investigate the structure, and whether or not it was perhaps the smoking evidence that would prove that the Bible was real. Documents revealed the following. The CIA has a thick case file on the Ararat anomaly. Over 20 years, numerous photos were taken, all to be classified as top secret. End quote. The files were gathered back in 2006 by Professor Portia Taylor, who submitted a Freedom of Information Act request. He said the following to Space.com. "I've gotten a newfound optimism as far as my continuing push to have the intelligence community declassify some of the more definitive type imagery. I'm calling it my satellite archaeological project. I maintain that if it is the remains of something man-made and potentially nautical, then it's potentially something of biblical proportions." End quote. The CIA, though, have said it's nothing of interest and people should trust their comments, saying that all it shows is glacier ice underlaying more recently accumulated ice and snow. Not everyone believes these comments, though, saying that they don't have a great track history of telling the truth, and they don't have the public's best interest. Other researchers have come forward in recent years to back up the theory that Noah's Ark along with the flood did happen. Noah's Ark is a story that many of us have heard. It details the story of Noah, of whom was given the task of building a massive boat and placing on it examples of the world's animals. Interestingly, in recent years, a few researchers have come forward and said that at one point in time a great flood did happen. Recent discoveries by underwater archaeologists suggest this event ended up sinking many cities. One such finding was made off the coast of Turkey, where researchers found traces of ancient civilizations dating back since the time of Noah. One thing that's interesting is many civilizations talk about a great flood, and some of these are even documented. Some scientists don't actually doubt that this happened, but have suggested it may not have been as massive as made out. For example, one theory is that the Great Flood could have been the flooding of the Black Sea, and researchers have said that rising water levels happened in this region around 7,000 years ago. Again, scientists know that there was an event that sank cities. After all, several underwater ancient cities have been discovered in recent years. It's the magnitude of the event that people can't seem to agree on. Various other images have been taken of the area, helping to fuel theories that more work is needed to be done in order to find out what this thing is. There's said to be various sites on Monterey where the structure can be found, and this has caused some to say that there could have been several bones. The idea behind these claims is that believers think the boat could have somehow survived on the mountain, with some theories suggesting that the climate of the mountain helped maintain some of its original shape. Whether Noah's Ark is ever going to be found, we don't know, but it's important to mention that Mount Ararat rests upon volcanic strata. Mount Ararat is known as the stratovolcano. A stratovolcano is a large conical-shaped volcano that's made up of one layer of hardened lava and volcanic ash. The air is actually made up of two stratovolcanoes. These are known as the Greater Ararat and the Lesser Ararat. It's also the Greater Ararat's massive size that poses an issue for the ark theory. It sits at a height of over 16,000 feet. Researchers have said that even if the Great Flood was true, there's not enough water that could rise to this level. The next problem is that an eruption happened in 1840, covering the mountain and surrounding area in volcanic ash. The next thing researchers said is, how would a wooden structure be able to survive this? It would have been immediately destroyed upon impact, and that's if the structure was even there in the first place. Some have said it's obvious that we're never going to find Noah's Ark on this mountain. These same people state it's also very much possible that Noah's Ark will never be found at all. However, some believers have said the eruption may have somehow missed the structure, and that it's still sitting on the mountain. A team of researchers even came forward and claimed they had found solid proof of the structure, and this came in the form of wood found inside the anomaly. They claim that this was part of the original structure, and say that this is proof that the story is fact. It was discovered by a 15-member team, and they claim that radiocarbon dating proved this word is over 4,800 years old. So what do you make of this anomaly? And do you think it's the final resting place of Noah's Ark? Disappearances happen every single day. Often we choose not to think about them, but statistically, roughly 600,000 people a year go missing. Some cases are solved, others remain unsolved, and some are fated to remain that way forever. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 ongoing discoveries and unsolved cases. Cops find a bullet in a girl's bedroom. In New York, police officers posted an image of a bedroom belonging to a young girl. Initially, it is easy to mistake it for a little girl's bedroom. Inside were teddy bears, toys, and pink bedding. But a sinister mark lies right above the bed. A bullet hole mere centimeters from where the girl's head would have been. The NYPD believe this case could have resulted in a fatal tragedy had the bullet hit just a little bit lower than it did. It pierced through the wall entirely, barely missing both her and her toys. The image was posted to serve as a reminder of the reality of firearms. The bullet came from outside the house. Alongside the picture, the New York Police Department included a caption. Every time you hear about a shooting, think about the stray bullet that made it into the bedroom of a precious little girl. The haunting reality of what happened that night must have been traumatic for the poor child, whose young life could have been ripped away so suddenly because of someone else's conflict. Fortunately, the NYPD have issued an official statement that no one was harmed, and that one of the people responsible for this heinous occurrence was caught and arrested. The child in question was staying with her sister for the weekend, a weekend which was with the little girl irreversibly harmed. The father of the girl was in the apartment at the time, but claimed to have been asleep when the near tragedy happened. Awoken by the loud sound of a pop which prompted him to check up on his daughter, having had enough life experience to know the sound of gunshots when he heard them, adrenaline filling his entire being as he rushed to see if his daughter was safe. When he checked the rest of the house, he found multiple bullet holes had made their way through into the home. There was one on his bedroom door, one on the bathroom door, front door, even bullet holes that had just hit above their couch, and of course the infamous bullet hole inches above the girl's bed. Their Harlem apartment suffered quite a bit of damage. When interviewed by the New York Post, he recounted she could have been playing in her room, She could have been going to the bathroom. She could have been sitting on the couch. My oldest daughter could have been here. My granddaughter could have been here. I was here. Could have hit me. The incident shook their family to its core, and ever since the occurrence he has been sleeping on the couch while his daughter sleeps in his own bed, too afraid to let her sleep in her own room. When asked why he did this, he responded, "The disappearance of Susan Pearson in 1966. A woman by the name of Susan Elizabeth Pearson was last seen in Missoula, Montana, and has not been seen since. Ms. Pearson, an American woman from Portland, Oregon, went missing due to mysterious circumstances. She had been a graduate student at the University of Montana and was teaching there as an instructor at the time of her disappearance, days before her doctoral thesis was due. She was last seen by her friends on campus, as she was meant to take her business administration exam but never arrived. Likewise, Susan missed 2 work checks meant for her adding up to $1,200, which were never claimed. Initial searches for the woman were futile, yet when the police checked her apartment, they found it in pristine condition, untouched with not a single sign of struggle. Her car was soon thereafter found completely abandoned. In Missoula's business district, her belongings were still in the car when the police checked it. They found her keys, purse, and other necessities inside, ones that any sane person would never leave unattended. Bones were found in 1970 but were analyzed and found to be animal remains. Susan Elizabeth Pearson is one of the oldest missing persons cases Montana has had in the past century. Ms. Pearson was the granddaughter of Walter Pearson, Oregon's Democratic senator. Susan King, who was one of Susan Pearson's friends and a prominent singer at a nightclub, told the police that she had visited her on the night before her sudden disappearance and that Pearson was in a frantic, nervous state. It was just a different Sue, she had stated. A prominent piece of the puzzle was the information King also received. Pearson mentioned leaving her life behind, begin anew in her frantic state. Later she added that 2 delinquent boys from the course she was teaching threatened her with physical violence. Pearson's brother David added that it appeared his sister rushed out of her apartment and the tea kettle was left to boil on the stove. Days after her disappearance, there was a report of a sighting in Lolo Pass, but evidence of her actually being there is non-existent. No further sightings were ever reported. Salm Heslop disappearance. A British flight attendant called Salm Heslop disappeared on the 7th of March 2021. Since then, police still have no idea what has happened to her or where she is. The former flight attendant was on the sea sailing with her 41-year-old boyfriend, Ryan Bain. The pair were out in the Caribbean when she went missing at the start of March. Since then, police have been trying to find her, though Ryan Bain has suggested she fell overboard and drowned. Ms. Heslop's friends and family have demanded a thorough search of Bain's yacht, Siren Song, but Mr. Bain has refused the search of his yacht despite the fact it was the last place where Ms. Heslop was seen alive. Currently, the Siren Song is moored in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Virgin Islands police spokesperson Toby Darima has stated that a warrant is required to search the yacht. They cannot search without a court-sanctioned warrant and admits they hoped Mr. Bain would simply allow them but did not. Ryan Bain has remarked how distraught he is over his girlfriend's absence, but he only reported her as missing over 10 hours from the moment she disappeared. Her family and friends are deeply suspicious of his behavior. A lawyer has been contacted by Mr. Bain, and when questioned about why he refuses to allow the police to search the premises of the yacht, has argued that he exercised his constitutional rights to remain silent. According to Mr. Bain, he woke up at 2:30 in the morning by the catamaran's anchor alarm, and that was when he first realized his girlfriend was gone. They matched on Tinder the prior year in July and have been together for a total of 8 months. On the night of her disappearance, witnesses have revealed that the couple went out for a dinner at a restaurant and left at 10 p.m., only for a scream to be heard. At around 2 in the morning, the time she allegedly went missing. Much to Heslop's family's dismay, the police discarded the reports of a scream, claiming that there are always noises and it could have been from any one of the vessels in the harbor. Corey Stevenson, Bain's ex-wife, has accused him of domestic violence against his significant others. Sam is 5 feet 8 inches, athletic, brown-haired, and Caucasian. The Coast Guard and Virgin Islands police are on the lookout for her or her body and hope to find some traces of her soon, but her parents have stated that Heslop is a seasoned traveler and thus would have known to avoid mistakes which would result with her falling overboard. Sam Heslop worked in Spain when she was in her late 30s, and she has the soul of an adventurer according to her dearest friends. When she and Ryan Bain met, they were allegedly deciding to take their vacation to experience adventuring together side by side. Heslop's family and friends are desperately worried for her, but with each passing day, the likeliness of her being found alive dwindles. The world is abundant with horrors great and small. There are mysteries that are fated to forever remain unsolved, never concluded, always merely speculated upon. While it seems that the mystery of Susan Elizabeth Pearson is destined to be placed into the cold case hall of unfortunate fame, whether or not that same fate is to befall Ms. Sam Heslop is yet to be determined. The case is still ongoing, and we can only hope that she will be found or that, at the very least, her family will gain some sense of closure in the near future. And if it turns out that foul play did occur, that justice will be served. What do you make of these unsolved cases? The land of the pharaohs has fascinated us for centuries. Every year, Egyptologists and locals discover incredible relics and artifacts, giving us an insight into their history and way of life. Every so often, though, mysterious artifacts emerge that create interesting discussions. Someone recently sent me this video of a strange Egyptian artifact. They were not able to find out much information about it, but said that their friend showed them the video, and that it appeared to have 3D technology. The man also explained how various Egyptian artifacts have been found over the years, and most of these get hidden away. He said that he remembered being shown a giant finger that was collected by a local robber. The man panicked and tried to give this thing away. It was then reported that 2 men approached him and asked him where he was keeping it. Shortly after this, the robber was never seen again. The man who sent me the email said that many of these strange artifacts don't get shared with scientists, as they say they soon go missing and that they're never seen again. Not many people have seen this video, but those who have said it's interesting. Some have theorized that it could be a modern recreation, but just looking at the video, the artifact does look old, and it also has the nose missing, which is consistent with other Egyptian discoveries. When it was shared to online groups, those who saw the video were impressed, with one user saying the following: "I've been to Egypt and there's just something about it that doesn't feel right. I remember being on a tour and they told us how the structures were made, but to me it just doesn't add up. I feel like there's a huge chunk of history we're not being told about, and it's frustrating because we have the evidence right in front of our eyes. Yet it seems that historians and archaeologists don't want to look at alternative theories to try and explain these things. To me, this looks ancient, and after speaking to locals, it seems that a lot of these have been deliberately hidden from us. It looks incredible." End quote. While another user said the following: "There's always the possibility that these things are faked. But how would one even go about doing this? This thing is amazing." End quote. While one person wasn't buying it and said the following: "These things are easy to make. I can't do them myself, but I think others can. To me, it looks like an inverted Egyptian sculpture." End quote. Out of interest, I did go online to see if I could find more information or even find one of these things. After looking for inverted Egyptian sculptures, nothing came up. I couldn't find anything similar to this that would suggest they were being mass-produced and sold to tourists. That doesn't mean it proves that it's genuine. I just couldn't find anything similar. As of right now, people are still debating whether this artifact is the real deal. Another interesting recent discovery is that of the nonsense hieroglyphs. For decades, a group of Polish archaeologists has been working to excavate the Saqqara necropolis. This necropolis was in the ancient capital of Memphis. Inside is filled with ornate tombs. Obvious that this particular necropolis was reserved for royalty. Nearby, in a dig taking place in September of 2018, Egyptologists were working in an era between the Pyramid of Djoser, the oldest pyramid in the world, and the Dry Mode, a rectangular ditch surrounding the pyramid. It was here they discovered something out of the ordinary. When tombs of royalty or other important people are uncovered, they are often filled with grave goods, symbolizing their importance. Some are even labeled with hieroglyphics. Modern hieroglyphics had been around since roughly the 32nd century BC, with the first 4 sentences appearing in the 20th century BC. The written language consists of over 1,000 distinct characters. With this ancient language unlocked, researchers can decipher all kinds of things about the tombs they decorate, including who they belong to. That was until the dig near the Pyramid of Djoser. Here the team found roughly 500 simple burials. These burials were simple, and in no way as neatly done as those of the royals. One could even call them clumsy. It's thought this could have been a burial site for the working or middle-class people. The team went on to say that the embalming was very basic, and that the bodies were placed directly into pits in the sand, or into now much decayed wooden coffins. Although the coffins had much damage and were often found empty from looters, one coffin remained intact enough for the team to study. On the lid where the name of the deceased would often go were what is best to be referred to as imitation hieroglyphics. They didn't make one bit of sense. The researchers believed that possibly the painter was illiterate and simply tried to recreate glyphs they'd seen before. Furthermore, figures of Anubis, guardian of the underworld, were painted blue instead of, as usual, black. They described the coffin as beautifully clumsy. Some believe that although the burials are simple and nowhere near as grand as the royals, it shows that everyday people still practice the same funeral practices, or even that the funerals of the royals were mimicked without pure understanding. The mummification and burial process held great religious beliefs in the Egyptian culture. Great tombs and burials aided at supplying a glorious afterlife. Maybe this was just one person's go at giving their loved ones one chance at having one as well. What you make of this interesting artifact? There is a reason that the wild tangle of the Amazon jungle is one of the most heavily studied areas of the world. The wealth of undiscovered knowledge and secrets that lie hidden beneath a tangle of vines and branches is seemingly endless. And every day it seems that more and more amazing findings are revealed. From remnants of ancient civilizations to life-saving components of medicine, there appears to be no limit as to what can be found within the Amazon rainforest. So today we will be taking a look at 3 recent Amazon discoveries. The asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs may have created the Amazon. The asteroid that plummeted to Earth over 66 million years ago and ended the reign of the dinosaurs is a well-known phenomenon. However, recent discoveries have led researchers to believe that the infamous meteorite may have been responsible for something else as well: the creation of the impressively diverse Amazon rainforest. A new study published in the Journal of Science analyzed thousands of fossilized plants in an attempt to understand the effects of the mass extinction caused by that fateful asteroid. An estimated 75% of all life on Earth, from gigantic dinosaurs to microscopic bacteria, went extinct as a result, but now the area is home to one of the most diverse ecosystems on the planet. Is crucial in understanding what might happen as a result of a second mass extinction event. What the researchers found surprised them. According to the study, it appears that the same blast that wiped out such a significant portion of life on Earth was also responsible for creating the entirety of the tropical rainforests on our planet. As expected, analysis of plant fossils from before and after the blast revealed drastically altered landscapes. Before the asteroid, the land was full of sparsely growing conifers and ferns, whose wide spacing allowed plenty of light to reach the ground, so unlike the dense jungle that we are familiar with in the Amazon. Following the extinction of millions of species, plant diversity declined an estimated 45%. An analysis of over 50,000 fossilized pollen records showed that angiosperms, or flowering plants, predominated the region for the next 6 million years, covering what had once been a semi-diverse land with what has been called the Rain of Flowers. As the area began to recover from the devastation and new species started to emerge, the plants began growing much more thickly, allowing for dense vertical growth that promoted the development of new species of shade-loving plants that thrived in the new ground level of the developing jungle. The researchers offered 3 predominant theories as to why the regrowth looked so different from what was there before. The first and most widely accepted is that the enormous dinosaurs that roamed the area before their extinction prevented more dense growth simply due to their large bulk that trampled plants, in addition to the sheer number of plants the large herbivores likely consumed. The other two theories suggest that falling ash from the blast may have created soil that to the faster-growing flowering plants, or that the extinction of the conifers provided a perfect opportunity for the flowering plants to take over. The researchers were so interested in the before and after of this great meteorite because the Amazon rainforest and surrounding areas are currently undergoing what is called the second mass extinction. Only this one is caused entirely by humans. Monica Carvalho, who co-authored the study, concluded with the grim takeaway. The lesson learned here is that under rapid disturbances, tropical ecosystems do not just bounce back. They are replaced, and the process takes a really long time. The findings of the research study are fascinating but grim, as they indicate that if drastic action is not taken and soon, we may stand to lose the rainforests and all they offer the world, possibly forever. The pilot survives in jungle for 38 days. Crash landing your plane in the middle of the unforgiving Amazon rainforest with no way of communication or any hope of rescue sounds like a plot from a cheesy film. Yet unfortunately, it is exactly what happened to Brazilian pilot Antonio Senna. The 36-year-old was hired to fly supplies to an illegal gold mining operation in the middle of the rainforest. However, he was only halfway there in his single-engine plane. When the engine failed, leaving him approximately 1,000 meters to make a crash landing decision. Fortunately, he was cushioned by the canopy of the trees and was able to miraculously land unharmed. Unfortunately, he was now stranded in the inhospitable Amazon rainforest covered in gasoline with only a backpack, 3 water bottles, for soft drinks, bread, rope, a lantern, and 2 lighters. Shortly after he gathered what he could and left the plane, it exploded, leaving him totally alone and abandoned with no shelter. Although he heard rescue planes overhead searching for him, the trees were too dense for them to spot him, and eventually even those beacons of hope disappeared. I was devastated. I thought I would never make it out, that I was going to die, he said. With essentially no provisions, he relied heavily on survival instincts to stay alive and avoid the dangerous predators like jaguars, anacondas, and crocodiles, in addition to the infinitely more poisonous and harder to avoid threats like bullet ants and poison dart frogs. He had crashed in a location so deep in the jungle that it was totally untouched by humans, and he stayed alive by eating only fruits that he saw monkeys eating. These fruits consisted of his entire diet for the totality of his ordeal, excepting 3 bird eggs that he managed to scavenge. He walked east day after day, just trying to stay alive and hoping that he would eventually run into civilization. And finally, after 35 days of walking, covering over 28 kilometers and losing 25 kilos, he stumbled towards the welcome sounds of a chainsaw and discovered a family of Brazil nut foragers. The family immediately took him in and began nursing him back to health after helping him contact his mother to let her know he was safe. He is very thankful that he was able to be rescued and appears to have had a change of heart after his ordeal, saying, "Despite the circumstances that led to that flight, being found by a family of gatherers who work in harmony with nature, who don't damage the forest, that was magical." Needless to say, he has stopped flying for illegal miners after his safe return home. Amazon rainforest is now contributing to climate change. The large expanse of trees and lush greenery that makes up the thick jungles of the Amazon has long been touted as our saving grace in the fight against building greenhouse gases and climate change. The receding territory lines that have fallen to civilization, forestry, and farming have long disturbed environmentalists, who are concerned with decreasing the net carbon emissions of an increasingly wasteful humankind. The Amazon rainforests are some of the most densely growing areas of land in the entire world, and all of those plants and greenery absorb a hefty amount of carbon dioxide from the air. However, new findings are revealing that humans may have finally pushed the rainforest past its breaking point, and that it now may emit more greenhouse gases than it absorbs. To come to this conclusion, scientists attempted to calculate the net greenhouse gas emissions from both the rainforest itself and the humans in the area. This is an overly complicated process that involves estimating the net emissions of methane, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, aerosols, and sooty black carbon that occur from human interactions in the rainforest, compared to how much of these gases the remaining rainforest can actually absorb. Ideally, the rainforest would function as a gigantic regulator for the Earth, and the net number of emissions should be negative. But the recent study has estimated that in past years, the number has switched to positive, meaning that we are producing more carbon dioxide and other harmful gases than the jungle can keep up with. Although disappointing, the findings were not really a surprise and were actually expected. The increasing presence of carbon-producing activities by humans, combined with the steadily decreasing area of actual rainforest, meant that it was only a matter of time before this point was reached. According to the report, which was compiled by a team of more than 30 prominent environmental scientists, some of the activities that contribute more heavily to this imbalance are land clearing fires, drying wetlands and compacting the soil for logging activities, cattle ranching, and regular flooding and dam building. These activities not only release vast amounts of potent methane and other harmful gases, but they also transform the entire landscape and further contribute to the disappearing jungle as well as to changing climates and local environments. Removing the trees and altering the land so drastically changes rainfall patterns and disrupts the natural heating and cooling cycles of the rainforest and contributes even more to the general warming of the environment. The good news is that the damage is not permanent at this point and can be reversed. The researchers emphasize that the most important way to halt the detrimental effects is to stop the current deforestation of the rainforest and protect that vital jungle that does so much for our planet. The Amazon is one of the most beautiful and diverse regions of the planet, and the mysteries that lie within should be protected at any cost. But what do you make of these rainforest discoveries? The National Aeronautics and Space Administration, known by the acronym NASA, was established in 1958. NASA is responsible for the United States civilian space program, as well as aeronautical discoveries and space research. High-profile examples of NASA's work include the Apollo moon landing missions, the Skylab Space Center, and the Space Shuttle program. NASA and other space agencies are now focusing on Mars, even going as far as saying they will put humans on the red planet within the next few years. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun in our solar system, and it's also well known for its red appearance due to the iron oxide present on the surface. Dubbed the red planet, Mars is also thought to be the next best planet compared to Earth for inhabiting humans and sustaining life. Throughout the years, Mars has been synonymous with aliens, and for its potential for there to be life forms inhabiting it. Countless references within film, TV, and books, all with the same theory that Mars was home to extraterrestrial life, one of the most famous being War of the Worlds. In recent years, though, people have said they're able to back up these claims with mysterious photographs that have been sent back to us. Although NASA has come forward countless times and denied this, amateur researchers believe there's more going on Mars than what we're being told about. One of the photographs that believers use is that of the 3 giant conical towers. Someone who was searching around the Mars surface for anomalies stumbled across what they described were large towers. Furvis saying that whatever these things were, they were clearly very big, and that it even looked as though they'd been placed in a line, with some comparing it to the pyramids in Giza that are aligned with the cosmos. The next problem the person pointed out was the enormous size of these things, saying that when measured they came in at 4.8 kilometers or 2.9 miles in height. They say that such structures could not be created by nature and that there's nothing around them that looks similar. The next thing they did was use Google Maps to get more detailed photographs. This was when they thought that these things must be artificial and not created by nature. Another interesting thing to notice that the researchers compared these images to older photographs that had been taken from the region. And although they said you can still see the structures in old archives, they noted that it looked as though NASA had made the area fuzzy, so that it was harder to see the structures. Although this might sound like an unfair claim, this isn't the first time that NASA had been accused of covering up certain areas. In fact, the agency themselves have said they've done this on a number of occasions. One UFO researcher said the following about the image. All this shows me is that what we're looking at are large towers of artificial origin. It's not like one of these things was found. We have 3 large towers in a row that are still standing tall. The ground around them is flat and there's nothing like them in the area. They are what they look like. These are large towers." End quote. NASA, though, have not got on board for this idea and have said that although these images look interesting, people are going to be disappointed because what they're looking at is pareidolia, where the mind tricks us into thinking that something is there when it isn't. Believers don't buy into this, though, and have said that this is a standard reply from the agency. Another interesting mass discovery is that of a levitating orb. Although not much information can be gathered on the image, online users have said they found what looks like an orb hovering above the Martian surface. Interestingly, those who spent large amounts of time looking through old NASA images have said these things can occasionally be seen in the sky. Orbs are not anything new to people who investigate UFO sightings. In fact, the orb is one of the most commonly reported unidentified flying objects. The thing is, people can't seem to agree on what they are. One thing they're known for is being able to travel at high speeds, get into places that planes and helicopters would never be able to reach. Things like forest woodlands in between buildings and also making no noise. These things have been reported on hotspots like Skinwalker Ranch, where they've been observed flying up to the owners of the ranch, almost as if inspecting them. Investigators have theorized that this is what we're seeing in this image, but NASA's reply was that this is pareidolia, and that the ball isn't floating, it just looks like it. Another anomaly on Mars that sparks debate is that of the supposed crash flying saucer. This image was taken from a ravine on Mars, but people noticed that there appears to be an object wedged inside of it. It was an interior we got shared online that people noticed this thing looked like an unidentified flying object. Something to notice that amateur researchers have said that various UFOs have been seen in the Martian sky. And sometimes these crafts are even picked up in images. Some amateur researchers, though, have said this photograph is hard to find online now, and this has only caused a variety of different theories to be put forward as to why this is. One UFO researcher said the following: "I shared this image a few years back on a group, and the other day I remembered it, so tried to find it. However, when I looked online, it was impossible for me to find it. I couldn't find any trace of this image. It was like it vanished from the internet. I messaged one of the admins and they sent me the image, but only because they had saved it from a previous post. It's strange that you can no longer find this photograph on the internet. As of right now, NASA have said that none of these things are true, and what people are seeing is either rocks on the Martian surface or pareidolia, where our minds tell us that something is there when it isn't. So what do you make of these alleged artifacts on Mars? Do you think they show anything of interest? Or are they just rocks?" Dense jungle regions of our planet are home to countless mysteries. To this day, archaeologists are still finding ancient civilizations spread beneath the jungle canopy. It's not just buildings and ancient settlements that are being reported on, though. For years, tales of unknown creatures have been shared by the locals, which eventually reach outsiders when they venture into these regions. One of the most mysterious and interesting is that of the giant Congo spider, also known as the Jabarfofi. The Jabarfofi, more commonly known as the giant spider of the Congo, is that of a large undiscovered species of spider that is reportedly the size of a man and has survived from larger arachnid species found in ancient prehistoric times. Though large spiders have been reported all across the continent of Africa, it appears that within the Congo there are native tribes known as the Baka that referred to the spider as the Jabarfofi and have a reported leg span of roughly 4 feet long. This was uncovered after a number of African reports began telling of a massive spider infesting different regions, and this was happening at different times of the year. One of the first reported sightings of such a creature occurred back in the 1890s, when a missionary from England ventured into the country of Uganda and discovered a massive web located near Lake Nyasa. He then writes that as they were looking at the web and getting closer to try and understand what it was given its massive size, as it was stretching between 2 larger standing trees, several of his men became trapped. As they began to move in the webs, sticking to the strings, they claimed spiders with legs longer than 4 feet began to come out and bite the men. Later expeditions in 1938 would lead researchers to consulting with local and native tribes in the Congo that told of the Jabal Fofi spider that was believed to have a matching leg span of 4 feet in length, had thousands of eggs described as being the size of peanuts, and would nest nearby villages in efforts to trap birds, large animals, and even humans. A second encounter was reported by an archaeoloid and his wife. And this was why they were traveling through the Congo. They were on a dirt path when they saw a large creature run across the road. They stopped in order to get a better look at it, initially thinking that the animal in question was a monkey due to how large it was. But after approaching it, they soon realized that this creature was a giant spider. Due to these reports within the region, it's caused some to suggest that the Congo and places around it are home to large prehistoric creatures. As more and more strange reports begin to surface coming from that of the Democratic Republic of Congo, it becomes apparent to many different researchers that the country seems to be an otherworld of impossible-to-explain sightings and supernatural occurrences that have left many wondering if the country appears to be lost in time. This is due to the fact that the entire country seems to be filled with a number of strange creatures and reports that fit that of ancient prehistoric time, with claims of dinosaur-like creatures still roaming the denser areas of the Congo jungle. Despite a number of strange claims, such stories and accounts from native tribes have been impossible to verify, as the dense jungles throughout the region have proven an impossible obstacle for researchers in the modern day. When early explorers were hiking through these regions, local tribe members would warn them about giant spiders that would prey on humans. They said to the explorers that if they came across giant webbing to leave the area immediately, as this was proof that the giant Congo spiders was nearby. One tribe described these spiders as being able to jump from tree to tree, and that even though they were bright in color, they were hard to see in the backdrop of the jungle. They said that this species of spider also built mounds, and that if they saw one to stay clear of it. The Congo Basin has an incredible ecosystem. The area is around 500 million acres, which makes it larger than the state of Alaska. Those who have heard about the giant Congo spider have suggested that it could be a new species of arachnid. Most of the local stories describe the spiders digging shallow holes close to tree roots and then camouflaging it with nearby leaves. Cryptozoologist William J. Givens was another person who had a run-in with this mysterious creature. The naturalist detailed the wall on the hunt for another Congo cryptid known as the Makeni-Bembe. His expedition team encountered locals, who told them about their experiences with giant spiders. Amazed at what he was hearing, he was excited to share their stories with others when he returned to Canada. He said the following: on this third expedition to Africa, I took the opportunity to inquire if the pygmies knew of such a giant spider, and indeed they did. They speak of the giant or the great spider. They describe a spider that is generally brown in color, with a purple abdomen. They grow to quite an enormous size with a leg span of at least 5 feet. The giant arachnids weave together a layer made of leaves, similar in shape to a pygmy heart, and spin a circular web, said to be very strong between 2 trees, with a strand across a game trail. These giant ground-dwelling spiders prey on the forest antelope, birds, and other small game, and are said to be extremely dangerous, not to mention highly venomous. Although his team didn't see one of these spiders, he said that the local tribe members warned them about the area and said that they should be on high alert. William believed that the locals were telling the truth about what they'd seen, and that when talking about the spiders they even seemed somewhat scared. Going back in the 1960s, an amateur explorer detailed his encounter with the locals that inhabited the dense regions of the Congo. He said that he'd hired a local guide to help him make his way around the terrain. But one thing that interested him the most was how the locals would talk about the wildlife in the region. He said that they detailed seeing large flying reptile-like creatures, but one of the most fascinating was that of a giant spider. Same with most of the reports. The locals described these spiders as being over 3 feet in diameter and claiming that the hatchlings of these spiders are bright yellow, with a purple abdomen. So what is this thing? Although various people have come forward and said that such a colossal spider could never exist, they haven't totally ruled out the possibility that this creature exists. Every year, scientists and researchers are discovering new species, some of which were thought to be extinct. It's for this reason that some have suggested that the giant spider of the Congo may be a real species. It's just that the true size of it has been exaggerated. After all, in 2019 alone, scientists discovered over 71 new species of spiders. Other mysterious creatures that have been encountered within the region is that of the Kongamato. It's said to look like a modern-day version of the pterosaur. These creatures have been sighted all throughout Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Papua New Guinea. Reports of these mysterious pterosaur-like creatures have left many believing, with overwhelming certainty, the possibility of the creature's existence well into the modern day. The name Kongamato actually roughly translates to the breaker of bones, as many natives have claimed to have been attacked by these flying creatures. This is when they venture too close to nearby rivers and deeper waters. Some claims range from its wingspan being 4 to 40 feet wide, and natives have described the creature to be a perfect description to that of the pterosaur. This is despite the locals lacking the education of dinosaurs, flying reptiles, and their appearance. Although many of the sightings of these creatures are limited to the Congo, there are several reported cases that stretch as far as Papua New Guinea and all across Africa. Additionally, when European travelers were visiting these regions in the hopes of colonization or trade, they wrote extensively about encountering large flying creatures of which often attached their crew and carried away anyone who ventured away from the group. Given the wide expanse of the jungles of the Congo being widely unexplored, as well as housing a large number of different bird species, as well as larger flying species, it could for a while be the case that the Kongamato is a direct descendant of the pterosaur, and that they've somehow managed to survive in the rich, fertile areas of the Congo. So what do you make of these mysterious encounters with the Jabar Fofi spider? Do you think the creature is real, and that the creature's true size has been increased by word of mouth? Or do you think these are just stories,